Clark Lee bolsters his staff. Where do the Vandy boys start in the preseason rankings? And the women's hoops team got screwed. This is Locked On Vandy. Let's go.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton, and thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, big news in the world of Vanderbilt today. Vanderbilt football. Clark Lee adds to his football staff. The AFCA convention is happening right here in our backyard over at Opry Mills, the Opryland Hotel, AFCA convention. So, what better time than now to announce some staff additions? So Melvin Rice will join the program as an assistant coach working with the safeties. In addition to that, Steve Gregory as a senior consultant, associate defensive coordinator, Garrett Altman, as an analyst for the offense, and Ian Burrez as an assistant director of football sports performance. So a little bit about each coach, and then I'll kind of give you the rundown on kind of their impact. Well, Melvin Rice joins after 2 seasons at New Mexico State, where he was co-defensive coordinators and coached the safeties for, I would say, probably one of the top turnarounds in the nation under head coach Jerry Kill. New Mexico State had won more than 3 games, hasn't won more than 3 games since 2010, but they made it to the bowl twice in Jerry Kill's 2 years there, and went on to the Conference USA Championship game this season, unfortunately losing to Liberty, but they did have a title game berth. The Aggie defense led Conference USA in scoring defense, ranked 5th nationally in red zone defense. And during the 22 season, New Mexico State was 29th nationally in total defense, and they had a guy ranking 13th nationally in solo tackles. All right, so that's and he also spent time at Temple and Northern Illinois, coached corners there, and coached corners at both places, and coached secondary at Northern Illinois. Excuse me, but he coached in the top 50 defense. So Coach Rice is bringing a lot of knowledge to the defensive side of the ball. I think they did, if you watch this Aggie defense, that was one of the things that, as their offense was kind of figuring some things out, they played in a tough league. Conference USA is not an easy league. So as they were trying to figure some things out, if you watch them on film, they flat get after you, man. They fly around the ball, they tackle well, and then once they get in the red zone, obviously, as the rankings suggest, they're extremely, extremely stingy down there. So teams have to really, really earn it. Now, also Steve Gregory comes in, and he is coming in as associate defensive coordinator. Not sure what that means, but he comes in as associate defensive coordinator and a senior consultant. So he's going to assist. So what that means, actually, according to Vanderbilt, VUCommodores.com, the official site for Vanderbilt Athletics, Steve Gregory will serve as a senior consultant and associate defensive coordinator, which means assisting Coach Lee in off-field areas as the head coach assumes defensive coordinator responsibilities in 2024. So he's really just going to kind of take care of a lot of the things that Clark Lee can't take care of because he's the head coach. And there's some things that he's going to say, okay, Coach Rice, Coach Gregory, we need some help here. And Gregory couldn't serve as an on-field coach because they had all their spots filled. But he's going to assist Coach Rice and Coach Lee in implementing the defense. Now, Clark Lee will probably call plays on game day, but a lot of the grunt work will come with Rice and Gregory. So he spent 2 seasons with the Dolphins, the last 2 seasons with the Dolphins. He's coached safeties in his second year. He spent 3 seasons with the Lions, 2 years as a defensive assistant, and 1 as a defensive backs coach. He began as quality control at Syracuse in 2015. He was a 3-year starter at Syracuse. Pretty good resume here. Played in the league for a little bit as an undrafted free agent. So it's I'm excited about this hire because this guy has a lot of NFL experience and knows what it takes to get to the next level. And also it looks like he's going to be very well served in that off-field role, kind of like as an analyst, kind of like as a behind-the-scenes head coach, kind of like what Mike Bobo did for Georgia. He was the associate offensive coordinator for Todd Monken, him and Buster Faulkner. A lot of programs are starting to do this where they're hiring guys like Steve Gregory, Mike Bobo, Jerry Kill will land somewhere as an analyst. There'll be guys, Nick Saban does this all the time with his run of assistants. They have off-field roles, a lot of film work, a lot of prep work, a lot of scouting, a lot of scheme derivatives, a lot of research-based stuff that they're going to do. So that's going to be a huge addition, and that's going to be a huge help to Coach Lee because being a defensive coordinator and the head coach is never easy. And if you have 2 guys on your staff that has been in those roles, that is absolutely massive. And Rice has coached in some really good defenses, and Rice has also led the way. So that's exciting as well. Now, Steve Altman – no, not Steve Altman. I keep wanting to call him Steve. He looks like a Steve. Garrett Altman joins he comes to Vanderbilt. He spent 2 years as an offensive analyst at New Mexico State. He assisted Tim Beck during his 2 seasons there. Kind of like what Gregory's going to do for Coach Lee. He was kind of in an off-field role. Those analysts do a lot of prep work, a lot of advanced scout work, a lot of drawing up cards for managing scout teams, being the liaison with the quarterback if the coordinator wants to be in the booth. Like a lot of that stuff is what happens with analysts, and he did a tremendous job there because this year New Mexico State won 10 games for the first time since 1960. They had the Conference USA Offensive Player of the Year in Diego Pavia. They ranked among the top 25 in FBS in passing touchdowns, 14th to be exact, points 18th. Passing yards per attempt, 21st, and passing efficiency at 25th. They also averaged 44 points per game over the final 4 games to earn bowl eligibility last season in 2022. So that was his most recent work. He obviously Tim Beck was the head of all of that on the offensive side of the ball, but people don't know how big of a role these analysts play because they're not on the forefront. But they're in there in the trenches, advanced scouting, things like that. And it's a big job. It's a big undertaking. So it's something that should not be underlooked. And then last and certainly not least, Ian Burress joins the strength staff. He's been at Notre Dame and USC. He served under Robert Steiner at Notre Dame, and at the same time as Clark Lee as well. So they were all together at Notre Dame. So there's a little bit of familiarity with that. Also spent time at USC in 2021. He was back. He hired him back from Notre Dame because he went from Notre Dame to USC back to Notre Dame. And I would say that he has learned a tremendous amount from Robert Steiner and the current guy at Notre Dame, who I think left to go to the NFL, if I'm remembering correctly. So, again, building a great strength staff is imperative to this operation. With Steiner, he's got to have a good staff, guys that he trusts, guys that know his process, because really he has not a lot of time. And he has even less time because Clark Lee is on the hot seat. And so this is we got to have this now. So you got to have guys you're familiar with, guys that know that you don't have to explain your process to, because that would be, something that you have to take time doing. So kudos to Clark Lee. He's making a lot of the right moves in this offseason. I think he's building a staff that's going to help him be able to manage the rigors of being a head coach. I think he's finally starting to kind of understand. It feels like he's finally starting to kind of understand how this thing works and building a good staff, a staff that has a little bit of urgency, a staff that's going to do things slightly different in a good way, and things and guys that are going to take advantage of what they have around them and the resources they have around them to make and put these guys in the best situation as they possibly can be. So Clark Lee, again, if this doesn't work out, it won't be for lack of trying, but it will just be, just unfortunate something. And I think he's, the first 2 years, the first year he probably didn't know what he didn't know. The second year was really good, and he almost went to a bowl. Had two really good wins over teams that he should not have beat, and had some really good momentum. This past year was abysmal. Took a big major step back, but sometimes that happens at Vandy. So we'll see if that year was more of a fluke, or if he didn't have a good mix, or whatever. So again, making all the right moves in the portal, signing some good guys in recruiting, and of course hiring a good staff around him is always imperative. So I think he has bolstered his staff. I think he's done a tremendous job at doing that. So stay tuned. We'll see kind of how that all plays out. We'll see kind of what the safeties look like now under Coach Rice. I know that had to have been something that motivated Brandon Fontenette to stay on board, and maybe some more people come over from New Mexico State. Who knows? But we'll keep you up to date on that. We'll probably talk more recruiting there, but. When we come back, we're going to touch on baseball for the first time. There's some news that came out with baseball, so stay tuned. Vandy boys up next. Here's Jase Medical first. All right. Episode's brought to you by Jase Medical. Jase Medical. Happy Tuesday, by the way. But Jase Medical, I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life. But can we just talk for a minute about prepping for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. Man, this is pretty scary. So I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if if your significant other or one of your kids got sick while the supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff can happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com, use the offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off of your order. Jase Medical. All right, welcome back. Segment number 2. It's the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. And speaking of those everydayers, we certainly thank you for finding us on social media, for finding us on YouTube and the audio version. The views are picking up, and I certainly couldn't appreciate it more. So thank you for all of that and making all of this possible. As you can see, my set is growing. I have Macho Man right here above me, right above my head. And that's a new addition. You see this book right behind me, Caddyshack. I have Tupac and Biggie representing. And this is a fun deal, man. So thank you, everydayers, for making this possible. This is becoming more and more fun. I got the Braves right there over my shoulder. So speaking of the Braves, This really has nothing to do with the Braves. But the Vandy boys, the preseason rankings came out from Perfect Score, and the Vandy boys rank number 6 in the preseason rankings. There were within the top 7, 5 SEC teams were represented, which is absolutely insane. And Vandy fell at number 6, which means, and I think and they were the lowest ranked SEC team, I believe. So that was in the top 7 out of that list. So there's some good teams in this league. There's some good competition in this league. I mean, this league is no stranger to good competition in any sport, much less baseball. Baseball has yielded the last 3 College World Series champions. Ole Miss being one of them, Vandy being one of them, Mississippi State, Florida. I believe Florida won. I got to go back. I got to brush up on my College World Series stuff, but this league is good. That's the point. So the Vandy boys check in at number 6. So we'll do a full-scale preview probably as we go, but I did want to add that the perfect game is who does the preseason rank, who does the rankings and the All-American team and all that stuff. All right. The perfect game has named Devin Futrell to the preseason All-American second team. And he's a junior from Pembroke Pines, Florida. He earned all SEC honors in 23. He was also named to the ABCA Raleigh Southeast All-Region second team as well. He is one of the lefty arms on the pitching staff. He led the way with an 8-3 record, 3.44 ERA, which is incredible in college. That's basically like pitching no-hitters in the major leagues, because it's the era of the ping, and you know what I mean when I say ping. So to have such a low ERA is quite impressive, right? He was SEC Pitcher of the Week on April 3rd. He he did 8 shutout innings against Georgia with 7 strikeouts. He ranked 3rd in the SEC last season in both ERA and walks allowed per 9 innings. His whip was 1.09, and he was 4th in the league, and his strikeout to walk ratio at 3.60. That ranked 10th. So he was 4th in the league in strikeout. His whip was 4th in the league. God, reading comprehension is bad for me. I'm reading this from VUCommodores.com. I'm reading all these stats off for you. So that's awesome. Vanderbilt Baseball has also announced their game times Thursday for its 36 home games against their 2024 opponents. I'll have a graphic that makes that, but weekday games for the remainder of the season will start at 6. Daylight savings will begin at 4:30. Something about the lights and things like that. I think with the construction, they have to be mindful of the times, and so this is going to be cool. So go check out the schedule there, and it's going to be good. So this team is going to be outstanding, and anytime you can have some good pitching, that is an awesome thing. I mean, I think when you come into playoff baseball, and it typically plays out like the Major League Baseball plays out, where like hitting is king in the regular season. But once you get to regionals, if you don't have good pitching, once you get to regionals, super regionals, in the World Series, if you don't have good pitching, you really don't have anything at all, because you get exposed, because that's when all the, if you have a good shutdown pitcher that can place the ball wherever he wants and throw a heavy ball, which means teams aren't hitting it very far, that's usually really beneficial to what you're trying to do. And typically pitching will win out. So having a good pitcher, especially a left-handed arm, is paramount, I think, to the success of your ball club. Now, if they can add some stuff in the bullpen around Futrell, I think that's key too. The bullpen always comes into play in college baseball, even more so than MLB, because those guys can those guys can be momentum builders or momentum killers, and I've seen it both ways. And there's been some games where the starter is dealing and then gets tired or something happens and the bullpen comes in and the game just gets blown wide open by the opposing team because either A, the reliever can't get it across the plate and ends up walking a lot, or B, they're just throwing absolute cheese up there and the other team is just crushing the ball. So either way, I think having at least one guy that you can say, okay, this is our ace. We got Futrell going, so we know we're going to be in good shape. So that's a relieving feeling for Tim Corbin to be able to have all of that going on. So so the season will begin against Florida Atlantic on February 16th. So it's closing in. And that'll be in Nashville. The first game will be that Friday afternoon at 4:30, and then 2 o'clock games Saturday and Sunday again because of the construction. Don't believe they have lights at Hawkins Field. And then they have a couple of they have like a double, I guess, back-to-back, the 20th and 21st against Dayton and Eastern Kentucky. Some interesting stuff on the schedule. Play Gonzaga this year. That's an interesting non-conference. Indiana State's an interesting one. Indiana's an interesting non-conference. Of course, they play Belmont, Valpo. They open up SEC play with Auburn at home. And then they so this isn't this. I like the schedule. I like the way baseball does the series. I think that's fun. But they have a crucial weekend series in mid-May against Tennessee to kind of close out the season. Tennessee and Kentucky. They have a big road series at Kentucky that will probably likely determine seeding, which always happens with that. So you got to love that, and you got to love what they're doing here with this team. So going to get to a full preview of this team as we get closer to February, and this will be a fun season. This will be a fun thing to watch because this team has a lot to offer. So I'm excited about that, and we'll definitely keep you more up to date as we go. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little about women's hoops. Again, they get screwed. I don't know why they keep getting screwed, but they do. But anyway, stay tuned. All right, talking about our friends over at FanDuel with the NFL postseason wrapping, with the NFL regular season wrapping up, the postseason getting fired up. There's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. You can't beat that. So the app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet. You can find live same-game parlays. You can find bets with the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. That's the easiest and best way to find popular parlays. You can just play the boring old spread or money line. If you play the money line, refer back to earlier in the read. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. All right, as we wrap up the show, we are back. It's Locked On Vandy. Thanks you to the Everydayers for making this possible. I can't thank you enough. But you can find us on social media, wherever you get your podcast. You can find us at Locked On Vandy, Instagram, and X as of right now. So this last thing, the rankings came out for this week, and the first team out receiving 38 votes was the 15-1 Lady Commodores. Why is that a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because I feel like they got hosed. And maybe it's just because I don't know enough about women's basketball to know. They may not have gotten hosed, but I'm going to say that they did. Because You're representing the SEC. You haven't been ranked in a long time. You're off to probably the best start that you've had in maybe a decade. But you're 15-1, 2-0 in conference after a mediocre season last year. Haven't been in the tournament in a while. It's been a rough go. And you can't get ranked? Like, the SEC is good at basketball on both the men's and women's sides. You can't get ranked? Like, come on, voters. What are we doing here? Like, reward this team. Like, this team, I know they don't win pretty. They didn't win pretty against Florida. They won kind of ugly against Mississippi State. Like, this team is gritty. They look sloppy sometimes. But they have really stellar defense. They take the ball away, and they play really good complementary basketball. When one side is down, the other's up. And you can't understate that, because what do? They win. They win. That's what they do. They win. And so I just don't understand it. I don't understand how you could not rank them, especially when they have an SEC schedule coming up. And I guess they're just not believing in the hype, which I guess I'm the Locked On Vanderbilt podcast, so apparently I'm going to be pretty biased. But nonetheless, I mean, they were on TV. You could watch them on SEC Plus. You could see how gritty they were, and it didn't look pretty at times. The shooting was kind of bad to start the game. They were ice cold. But what did they do? They played defense, and they won. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to win. That's what you're supposed to do. Herm Edwards said it best. You play to win the game. So anyway, they should be ranked, hands down. So it's kind of disappointing, but they get a game Thursday at Kentucky, 8-8 Kentucky. This will be a chance for them to redeem themselves a little bit. This will be a chance for them to carry that chip on their shoulder and make sure that they make a statement here. And if they can make a statement against Kentucky, I think this will be. I think they'll finally get ranked. They need to make a statement against Kentucky, and they need to win on Sunday. So that'll be something coming up that needs to happen. The men's team, they travel to Baton Rouge, so we'll talk about that a little bit as well. And so they'll take on the Bayou Bengals, and we'll see how that goes. So. But that's going to do it for us here on the Locked On Vandy podcast. Like I said, follow us on social media at Locked On Vandy, X and Instagram. Thank you to the everydayers for making all of this possible. You can find us on YouTube and wherever you find your podcast, on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, wherever you find your podcast. Search Locked On Vandy. Make it your first listen each and every day. Make sure up next you watch Locked On SEC. And then, of course, support my good friend Steve Willis at Locked On Ole Miss. So some things coming down the pike. I've got former Commodore quarterback Kurt Page in the works to make an appearance right here on the Locked On Vandy podcast to not only break down Nate Johnson, but we're just going to chat about his time at Vandy and the time that him and I spent coaching together. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to Kurt Page coming on the show. I'm working on getting a former Vandy baseball player, one that all of you will be excited about if I can lock that down. I'm not going to tell you who it is just in case it doesn't work out, and I don't want to look stupid, but there's something I've got talks in the works of getting a Vanderbilt baseball player, former player, to join the show. It's not, and I'll give you a hint, it's not Dansby Swanson. So you'll get excited, but not that excited. So not Dansby Swanson type excited. So temper your expectations. So anyway, we are the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. We'll see you back here tomorrow. But until then, as always, you know the drill. Anchor it down.